Welcome back to another episode of Success After Trauma, where we bring on guests and they share a little bit about their story, maybe some of the challenges that they faced, what their journey was like for healing, and then how they're giving back today. I crossed paths with Nicole Harmony in a Facebook group somewhere. We aligned on the fact of healing trauma, or that's what I thought we aligned on. And as I got to learn a little bit more about Nicole, Nicole's been on her spiritual healing journey for the last 12 years. And uniquely enough, something that's very near and dear to my heart, Nicole supports men in accessing their healthy feminine and masculine energy in an appropriate balance. Nicole, that is an incredible work that you're doing. It's extremely needed, especially in this time of our evolution of humans. Tell me a little bit about, would you mind taking us back to the earlier days of your journey? Like what kicked it off? What did it look like? And how did you come to this realization of how you wanted to serve?
Well, going way back to the first part of my journey is I had massive chronic pain, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And it was to the point where it felt like a spear was on fire and was jabbing into my jaw, and it would happen very quickly. It would come on very quickly, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. And that was back when I trusted Western medicine, which I no longer do. um, so I started kind of going down. It was again in my left jaw. So I'm like, oh, it's my teeth. So I have cavities. So I went to the dentist. The dentist was like, nope, you don't have anything. I'm going to send you to an oral surgeon. Okay. Why? And they were like, oh, we may have some masses. I'm like, okay. So I go from a cavity to mouth cancer. Awesome. So I get to the oral surgeon. He does x-rays. There's nothing there. So he was like, yeah, but I think you're a candidate for MS. So I'm going to send you to a neurologist. I'm like, all right. So mouth cancer to multiple sclerosis. Awesome. Yeah, this is great. And so I go to the neurologist, and he gives me a oral exam, doesn't do an MRI or x-rays or anything like that. Blankets me with a diagnosis of trigeminal neuralgia, gives me a prescription for Lyrica, and walks me to the elevator and says, I'll see you in 60 days. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? What is this? I'm 35 years old. I have to be on this drug for the rest of my life. And why? And I had all these questions, and he had no answers for me. So I stayed on the drug for about 10 days, and I started losing all quality of life. Like I was a vegetable. I had quadruple vision. I gained like 10 pounds overnight, and I was just like, this is not who I am, and there has to be something better. And I remember crying in the bathtub one night and being like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And my boyfriend, I had to move in with my boyfriend. He had to bathe me on a shower stool at the age of 35. And I was like, no. So I got off the drug, and I started just looking into more holistic approaches, and just through diet elimination and colon hydrotherapy. And then that's when I dove into the emotional healing, and I started to unravel all of the emotions that were attached to my jaw pain. And it's just started to reverse itself with all of the different modalities that I was doing. And then fast forward, that was probably about 2 years worth of work. And then I kind of went into remission, so to speak. And then out of the blue in 2018, it came back like with a vengeance. Nothing that I did helped it. And so I started doing even deeper work. And then I figured out that I was misdiagnosed. I ordered my own brain MRI because I thought that I had a brain tumor. I mean, I was at my wit's end at this point.
Mhm.
I was suicidal. I mean, I was just like, this is ridiculous. So I found out I was misdiagnosed, and that I had a bunch of compressed discs and herniated discs. So I started doing the work on that. And then I again started connecting the body and the emotions with everything, and started doing the somatic healing. And around 2020, I was just sitting at my my parents' dining room table after Christmas, and they were like, "So, what's your next path?" And I said, "I'm going to be a coach." And they're like, "Okay, well, what's that? And how are you going to do that?" And I was like, "I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out." And then I enrolled in a training program, and 3 years later, here I am. And how I got to start working with men was it just, I didn't choose this niche, it chose me. I was kind of micro niching down, as coaches do. And I started doing a market research and threw it out there to the public and interviewed like 40 to 50 people, and 85% of them were men, and they were divorced, and they were either ready to give up on love, or they, were just very jaded and very vocal about it. And then their emotions started to flow whenever they got on the phone with me. And I realized that they didn't have a place to put down their pain. They needed a safe space. And that's what I offer in my containers, kind of more of a nurturing, maternal space, rather than a male coach is just going to be some male coaches. Am I going to obviously put everybody in the same box, but they're going to be like, suck it up, be a man, and kind of thing. And so that's where my uniqueness comes in, is helping them access that feminine energy, their
That
emotions.
that is so important. There, of all the people in the world, of all the people listening right now, we're gonna have all the different groups that people are like, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't work, that is so supportive. That's all. I have had the unique experience of I've experienced two polar opposites of that. I lived the first, say, about 30 some odd years of my life very in my values level 3, very very combative, very
Mhm.
yeah, and I now know, or I'm beginning to become aware of the importance of men having safe space and healing
Mhm.
that probably I'm making a projection, but healing that broken feminine energy, or damaged
Yeah.
feminine energy, and maybe something around with the mother, or maybe not, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful. So when you realized, when you were called to it, when it came to you, you were called
Mhm.
to it, it came to you. Um, what are kind of the next steps? You started realizing, like, oh my gosh, there's a need here. You started serving the need. What does it look like?
So it's been a bumpy road. It's very hard to get men to say yes to this level of work.
Oh my gosh, I can
And
imagine.
but every day I just wake up and it's like I'm trudging through the snow kind of thing. And I know my destination is more important right now, that I'm not backing down. And social media tries to, especially TikTok, I mean, I field so many hate comments on the daily, because I'm triggering men
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah, yeah,
But our triggers are our teachers, right?
right,
So
right.
I'm just going to continue to speak my truth. But the men that have gone through my program, they have like these miraculous breakthroughs almost every single session. And it's not about me, it's about them being able to access their own healing. I'm not the healer. They are. You guys are. Everybody else is their own healer. I just create that safe space, that safe container that's a judgment-free zone, a shame-free zone, and then just support them probably how they've never been supported by a woman in their life. So yeah.
Yeah, it's or also again, my projections, but maybe have never been treated that way from a woman, or um were jaded early on and weren't able to experience when a woman was treating them that way. Um
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a great point, because a lot of the work that I do is baselines. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term or not, but
Would you share a little
so
bit? I'm not.
sure. So when we're born between the ages of 0 and 8 years old, we kind of create this baseline in our head of what is normal to us, right? And so that's when our nervous system is in kind of the rest, relax, and digest mode. Now go 8 to 18 or 8 to 14. If anything is different from that 0 to 8, even if it's peace and support, it's going to dysregulate your nervous system because the nervous system is used to chaos kind of thing. You know, if you grow up in a household and you have fighting and arguing and no support and a lack mindset, and then from 8 to 18 you have a completely different, the nervous system's going to be like, the brain's going to be like, no, wait a minute, this isn't right, this is different than what we grew up with, the what we started with. So it's going to create scenarios to get back to that baseline. And so going back to what you were saying about the mother or the mom or the, you know, the mother wound, the female wound, if a man grew up with a mother who's not supportive, and then all of a sudden they have a mother or a woman in their life that is supportive, then they're gonna create scenarios and start to sabotage if they haven't done the work, if they haven't had the awareness around their emotions and things like that, and being able to regulate the nervous system again.
Yeah, yeah, it's powerful. It's so powerful. So, and not on the terms of baseline, but very familiar in that 0 to 7, in that a term I've heard, or a label, imprint phase. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's powerful, you know, an awareness that sometimes I create, or share with people, is that even sometimes, and I use this as an extreme, and it's not a literal example. It's not one that I've actually, well, I'm sure I have, but it's a semi hypothetical. Sometimes we were just told to be patient and let everyone else go first too many times from 0 to 7.
oh yeah,
And now we're
yeah.
35 and 40, and we have this brilliant idea, but we're waiting for all of our friends to launch their idea and be patient.
Ah, yeah. Ooh, that's a good baseline
Yeah.
to unravel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes those things come in because we can think of, and I'm projecting here, but we can think of traumas as this, like, ooh, sometimes it was this, like, didn't even notice it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Little T and big T trauma. And it was interesting. I really had to hold myself back because I try not to respond to any hate comments, or I try not to troll, you know, anybody's posts or anything. 'Cause how I want to be treated is how I'm going to treat
Mhm.
others, right? And this woman said, "Not everybody has trauma," and I'm like, "Woo, red flag!" Like, everybody has trauma because we were all raised by imperfect humans in an imperfect world, and so to say that you haven't had trauma
Yeah.
is naive at the best. But yeah, and little T and big T trauma. And this was kind of one thing that I had said on the Facebook post when I responded, is that the brain doesn't know the difference. It just knows that the body's physiology was disrupted.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of
It's
people,
powerful.
yeah, they, you know, they don't get it. And we as humans, we see our trauma. I know that I went through this because in my last ayahuasca journey, the 3 journeys, I mean, women were moving through some dark and heavy stuff. Now I've done a lot of shadow work myself, but I kept saying, well, do I not have any dark stuff? and, and my journeys were really beautiful, and they were very heart centered and heart focused. And but I kept comparing, you know,
Mhm.
even with all the work, I'm like, where's my dark stuff? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I my trauma may not be what they look like, but my brain attached it to this. And
That's
this
right.
is what I'm having to move through. So yeah, it's interesting how the brain is an interesting thing.
And how it brings us, you know, exactly what we need when we're going through those healing and growing and
Yeah.
ascension. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows why you received that specifically, but that's exactly what you needed.
Yeah. And that's what Mother Aya does. She doesn't bring you what you want, she brings you what you need.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about, for those that are, some of our listeners right now are going to know exactly what you're talking about, and some of the listeners might be a bit curious. Are you interested to dive in a little bit? Can you create some elaboration or paint a picture when you say Mother Aya?
Sure. Yeah. Mother ayahuasca is a vine found in the Amazon, and it's brewed into a tea that you drink in a ceremony. And it's about a 6 to 8 hour journey. It can create hallucinations, but it really just kind of unlocks the natural DMT in your mind. So you're able to remove those blocks and those veils that may prevent you from going deeper into your shadows.
That's beautiful. And so how many experiences have you had with the ceremony and the plant?
So I just surpassed my fourth ceremony with ayahuasca.
Wow. And I know you just shared a little bit about, you talked a little bit about an experience you just had. Would you share, at whatever level you're comfortable, what those, at whatever level of abstraction, what those experiences have been to you?
Oh, sure. So my first one was a horrible, beautiful journey, I'll say. Um, uh, and it was interesting. I was doing a podcast regarding ayahuasca, like a cross it off bucket list podcast about ayahuasca. And it gave me the epiphany that my first ceremony, I healed every male relationship I've ever had in my entire life. And it was violent purging every single time.
Wow.
So I've gone through a lot
Did
in
you,
relationships.
I,
Sure.
I gotta dive in. Did that journey take place before or after um your before men
Before,
were called? Okay, okay,
before.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense that
Ex-
that obviously
exactly.
men now had a safe space. They could feel the energy. Um,
Exactly. I had to heal all that negative and anger and resentment and pain that I had endured, for myself, the choices that I had made, obviously, in relationships in order to stand in integrity and create that container for the men. So that was the first journey. And then these last three was in a retreat ceremony. And so it was combined with kambo, which is the frog poison,
yeah.
um, sananga, which is the eye drops, and rapé, which is the tobacco snuff with the herbs that you blow up your nose. And so my Aya ceremonies, I went in with my intention of opening my heart more because I want to share more from my open heart to these men. I don't want to speak from the ego. I want to speak from my heart. And so I felt like my heart had been closed still, somewhat. And so that's what my intention was. So my Cambo, they did the gate opening in my heart chakra. And that was an interesting experience. I had a heart problem when I was 4 years old. And um, whenever they put the medicine on, I started visualizing myself as this 4-year-old child that had EKG suction cups on her chest. And I went as an adult and I took her off of my mom's lap, cradled her, and started taking the suction cups off of her. And they had given me some green medicine to take with it. And after, like, during the journey, after I was taking the suction cups off, and Mama Aya does this as well, but it was like somebody tapped me on the shoulder and I got up and I purged into my bucket. My bucket purge was bright green, the color of my medicine. So it just needed to come out. Not that it was still there, but it's like an energetic
Right,
kind of
right, right, right,
emotional
right.
purge. Um, so then going into the Aya ceremony, I mean, I was kind of connected to my light language. Are you familiar with light languages?
I am, but at surface level.
Okay.
Would you, for everyone listening, would you share just a quick little glimpse of that as you continue in?
Sure. So your light language is basically your soul language. Some people connect it to the star seeds. I'm going to get really woo-woo with people, but whatever it resonates with is great.
Correct.
But so I was kind of speaking my light language when I was getting the rapé the second time, and just trying to allow the medicine to integrate into my body. And the woman next to me was, she was like, what do you say? And I was like, oh, I'm channeling my light language. And it was kind of calming me down and grounding me and just giving me peace. And there's a reason why I'm saying this. So then, so that first ceremony night was like an Aya slumber party. And if you've ever been in an Aya ceremony, then you know that it's kind of like a noble silence. But this night was like a slumber party because it was an all female retreat. And we're all sitting up and dancing and having fun and singing and playing the drums and dancing around the fire. And if anybody was purging, we'd be like, "Oh, sister, let it go, let it go." I mean, it was like completely different. So that was the first night, and I did 1 cup, and then the second night, I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to do 2 cups the second night." But the second night, we were in a different ceremony space. It was supposed to rain, and so I couldn't really connect to the ceremony space. So I started, I took the brew, and I started hallucinating, and the canopies of the trees became kind of a biosphere, and it was almost like a dome. And so I was talking to the woman next to me, and I was like, "Do you see the trees going into and I don't know if you've ever taken hallucinogenics, but it can just, do things to your mind." And she was like, "No, I don't see what you see." And I was like, "You see that portal?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "All right, well, I'm going." And she was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I gotta
"Okay."
go. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, have fun. So I just shot into the portal, and I'm on my journey, and I feel I can hear the rumbling in the earth, like the seismic activity in the earth. You become very connected to nature when you do Mother Ayahuasca. And so I'm laying there, and I'm very laser focused on my friend Kristen, who was asking about the light language the day before. And it was like I couldn't take my eyes off of her. If I did, then something would happen. Like that's the feeling that I had. And if I tried to lift up, it was like rubber bands were attached to me, and they would bring me back down to the earth. And I'm just going to be really open and share. And so as I get deeper into the journey, the second cup comes around, and I choose not to take it because I feel like I'm good, what I'm doing. And I asked Mama, you can ask Mama Aya questions, and I said, "Do I need a second cup?" And she was like, "Nope, you're good." And I was like, "Okay." Um, so Kristen did take the second cup, and almost immediately she started downloading her light language and becoming her star being, but there was a lot of fear behind it. And so our friend Melissa, she got up and went and was kind of cradling Kristen, and they turned into these elf-like creatures that had pointy ears and long noses, and they had red tribal markings on their face, and they were transparent, and they had gold cogs in their forehead and in their cheeks. And um, and then Melissa had kind of this headdress on, and the way that I interpreted it was, and I felt like I was presiding over what was happening, and Kristen was just going crazy with her light language, and um, just again a lot of fear and resistance was coming behind it. So it was almost like Melissa was birthing Kristen, and she was the queen. Kristen was the princess, and I was the king, and this is my star family kind of thing, right? And there was no fear behind it. It was just all love and just acceptance of what was happening. And then a couple of people came in at in the same area. It was kind of like a portal, and they turned into the star creatures. But then some people came over there that didn't turn into the star seed, creatures, and or beings. I shouldn't call them creatures and beings. And so I don't know what that message was, other than just accessing a different life and understanding that connection moving forward in my life. But that was just, yeah, a super miraculous journey that I had that night. And then the third night was kind of more noble silence, but again, just up and playing the drum, and I didn't have any violent purging. Like I said, I would yawn, like primal yawn, and I would transmute the energy that way. When you're in the circle, my first ceremony, there was one time where we were all kind of sleeping, and the shaman came in. He was waving his condor feathers, and he was chanting, and 85% of us got up and just all grabbed our buckets and just started violently purging. And we didn't know why we were purging. We just knew that whatever he was saying was stirring some stuff up. And then this time, it was almost like my vessel was more clear and clean, that I knew how to transmute the energy without violently having to purge it out into the bucket. I would yawn or I would dance. So anybody who's ever scared of ayahuasca because it makes you vomit, because people don't like to vomit, it doesn't always have to be a violent purge like that. It doesn't always have to be vomit. You can purge through yawning, laughing, dancing, movement, stretching, and then obviously purging out one through the mouth and then the other end too. So
Yeah, yeah. I think something I realized that I think is really beautiful. You went there to and asked for your heart to be opened up,
mm,
and a lot of what um the way I internalized your experience was you were everyone people were having certain experiences.
mhm.
Your experience was holding space of their experience.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Mm.
pretty cool.
All the hair, yeah. And that definitely did happen. I was the oldest one at the retreat, and I was actually older than some of the women's moms, and so I was kind of bringing the crone energy to the space, and they helped me like realize my youth again too. And it was beautiful how I could hold them in that space and in the support. But yeah, and then be supported by them as well. But yeah, definitely held the space for their journey as well. So
That's
thank you for recognizing that.
absolutely, that's incredible, and I want to share. I'll share a little bit, and then I'll let you kind of volley off of that for everyone that's listening. And then you mentioned, you said, "Hey, I don't know if you had to me, to all the listeners, like I'm not sure if you experience hallucinogenics. For myself, I've only experienced psilocybin, which for everyone listening, that would be mushrooms.
Mhm.
I experienced them twice at a microdose, and I had no form of visuals. And then I do have I I, I plan on experiencing psilocybin in the future again, and then I feel called to experience ayahuasca. That's my exposure with hallucinogens. For those that are listening, if you've had experiences with them, then you're already tuned into to kind of what's going on. If you've had very limited or no experiences with any type of hallucinogen or hallucinations or things of that nature, what I want to share with everyone is that this is just public information. You hop on Google. We're taking in our mind. Our mind is taking in up to 2 million bits of information every single second,
Mm,
and we're only consciously aware of about 126 bits of information per second.
wow.
So to put it into perspective, I tell people if there was 2 million playing cards on the table in front of us and I divided them into piles of 126, I'm rounding up just a little bit, but there'd be about 16,000 piles. That's every single second though. And that's
Wow.
real. That's all of the world. And then we're holding a pile of 126, and that's our reality. And that is real. Those are our cards. That is real. It's not okay. There's just more to the picture every second.
Mhm.
And when I share with people what I tell them, they're like, you don't get to see all the cards. But the realization is if you have a problem, it's in your deck of cards. And if you can't find the solution, it's in a different deck of cards. So we can't see all of the decks because if we looked at all of the decks, the rest of the information from the 126 to the 2 million, our mind auto delete, distorts, and generalizes for us so that we
Mhm.
can perform this thing called life.
Yeah.
And so what I'm sharing with people, if we've had no experience hallucinations, things of that nature, you can find out that there's more, about 16,000 times more, going on every single second than what we're being attuned to.
Yeah.
And so these modalities are opening up your well, and you talked about like at a scientific level and things of that nature, DMT, but at a
Mhm.
more abstract level, they're opening up your mental vision to be able to see more.
Your
Um,
subconscious mind, where we store everything that we don't want to see, like the ones that we suppress and shame and judge and criticize. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and whatever, whatever you want to share around the volume on that. I just wanted to I wanted to allow a little bit of awareness for those that are listening. Like I said, some of our listeners right now are like totally in tune. Some of our listeners have had the experience of ayahuasca. Some of our listeners maybe other forms of hallucinogens. But for those listening that have had no experience, really just helping create a little bit of awareness. That's powerful. I appreciate you sharing everything that you've shared, Nicole, around your experience. So tell us a little bit about your coaching business now. So we know who you serve. We know a little bit we know what started the journey, what the journey was like for you. Clearly, there's been a lot of shadow work. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of you healing you.
Hmm.
And through your healing, there's a lot of, and it's been very clear to me, and it's very powerful. There's a lot of you holding space for, and you literally said, men to heal themselves. I thought
Hmm.
that was extremely powerful. I loved when you said, like, we are the healer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Complete and total removal of ego. Go ahead. Yeah. No, tell us about it.
So I have a 6 month container and I just hold them in the space that they need to be. So they come and they have their goals, and we all have goals and intentions, but it's what comes forward, right? That needs to be healed. So it's kind of um, I don't ever know how each session is going to go. And I have something called the memory integration technique that is a combination of subconscious release, inner child, shadow work, where we actually go back to that memory, that baseline that was created, because we all have parts of ourselves that
Mm.
they drive our bus every single day and they sabotage our lives every single day, right? But we don't want to get rid of those parts necessarily, because that's who made us. That's who we are.
Powerful. It's powerful.
And they're I always say they're floating around in our auric field like little ploofs. And so each time we do this technique together, we pull one of those ploofs back in and we integrate it back into our soul, coming
Mm.
back to our true selves. So that's kind of what I offer the men right now, is just an opportunity to go get back closer to their true selves, that they're struggling in their relationship, or if they're struggling with women in general, because the women are so far in their masculine right now. And we are doing the work, and we have been doing the work as women, trying to release that. But at one point in time, if your woman is not feeling safe, then she's going to go into her masculine. And so at one point in time in your relationship, you created that space for her to go into the masculine, and it's time for the men to start taking accountability for that. And at that same time, coming back and sharing those emotions and allowing them to be accountable, but also to accept the fact that maybe there's not something that's not quite right, and let's figure out what it is. Let's access that emotion. Let's allow that little one to be seen, heard, and validated, because that's really what the self-sabotage is our little one, our younger version of ourselves, who isn't being seen, heard, and validated, and throwing a temper tantrum. Like, that's kind of the layman's terms of it, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I do for the men. And it's a 6 month container, and it's been extremely effective, especially when I pull in the shadow work. So
That's powerful. And for any of the men that are listening to this, if you're on the fence, if you're called to it, reach out to Nicole. But for the men that are listening that are on the fence and they're like, it's kind of sounds intriguing, but I'm not sure. Your life, all of your experiences, that what you are, is the reason why you're called to it is because you know it's going to heal you. The reason why you're nervous is because of all of your experiences you've had up to this point want to protect you.
yeah.
And living for guys and women too, but especially since we're on guys, let's talk about guys. We don't have to, as men, we don't actually have to walk like we think we know all these things to protect ourselves. I'm going to suggest or project that creates a reality in which we feel that we need to be protected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep,
Go ahead. Yeah,
exactly. The
no,
base
please.
no, the yeah, and going back to the baseline, if you feel like you have to protect yourself from a woman, then who what was the first time you had to protect yourself from a woman? When was that first scenario? Let's go back to that and let's nurture that little one and let them know that it's not their job to protect you anymore from the women. You're a strong, confident man, and it's now the adult version's job. Let's rip up that contract. Let's create a new baseline. Let's find out how to regulate the nervous system again.
That's powerful. Have you read by any chance? There's a book called, hopefully I'm not butchering, I'm pretty sure the title is The Way of the Superior Man.
My favorite book. I love
What that's yeah.
that book.
You're talking right from that book, and it was like I was like, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
When especially when you talk about what something that hit big time home for me and guys, just so you know, if you haven't read this book, read this book. And again, if you're having these
yeah,
issues, this is probably someone that you want to connect with, Nicole. Um, in that book, it talks about for everyone listening, in The Way of the Superior Man, it talks about a lot of things, but one piece is that when there is if you assume the role as the head of household, as the male, if you're assuming that role, so we're taking that
mhm.
as the assumption. If there is a breakdown in your relationship, whatever it is, there's an imbalance in the feminine and masculine energy, and you created it.
Yep, exactly.
You didn't have
Yep,
to create it, but if you're the head of your household, you created it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. So whenever, again, if there's a breakdown and you are more into your feminine and your wife is more into the masculine, and this is the relationship that I grew up with. So my mom is a very strong masculine female and my dad is more passive. And I I noticed this in the absence of her. I was over there. My dad has kind of gotten memory problems, cognitive memory. Um, and so when she went away, I was there kind of taking care of, not taking care of him, but just watching, making sure that he was okay. And they have this routine where they go out to dinner every Saturday. And so I had already made dinner. I didn't know about this routine. And he was like, well, I want to take you to dinner. And I was like, well, I've already made food. Let's, do this another time. So the next day he was like, all right, we're going to lunch. And I was like, okay. And he took the lead. And it was like there was a little spring in his step where, because my mom always chooses, she always said, she dictates everything that's going to happen. And there was a little spring in his step that he got to lead and he got to open my door. And I was just like, how did that feel? And he was like, it felt amazing, actually. And I said, you probably don't get to lead in your house very often. He was like, no, you're right. And so I'm not sure what that breakdown was. That's something that I'm starting to work through, finding out where the breakdown was in my parents' relationship and trying to heal that for them, for me. And well, that's how, generational trauma occurs. You have to be the one that makes that decision to stop, that trauma, that generational trauma. Anyway, so um, but yeah, it's at one point in time, if your woman is in her masculine, then there was a time that she didn't feel safe, or that she came in with that already not feeling safe from another relationship or her father. And but how did you attract one another? I mean, it's just, you can go down like
Mm-hmm.
such a deep rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
If you're attracting that, this is one thing that I'm fielding on TikTok right now, because they're just going bonkers on this one post that I just did. And I'm like, if you're talking about that you're attracting women who are on OnlyFans and sex workers and money grabbers, then where are you in that spectrum? Because
Boom.
you're attracting that into your
Boom.
life. It's inside of you.
I,
Yeah.
I I got excited when you said that. The thought was running through my mind. I was like, I want to share that we started profiling like where the female might get the energy from. And
Hmm.
again, since we are speaking today in this conversation, a lens of male, I wanted to highlight, and you nailed it. Um, whatever you're attracting, like forget the like yeah, the other person has a ball has all of their experiences that is who they are. So and there's a reason. So like this happened this out. Yeah, like every human.
Yeah.
And so we can profile other people, or we can just look inward like, okay, this person has this.
Hmm.
How did I attract this?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah, just like that.
Yeah. I attracted emotionally unavailable men all my life because my dad was emotionally unavailable to me as a child, and that's a lot of my shadow work that I've been doing the last couple of years, and it's been dark and deep. And
Hmm.
having to I've had to rip up several contracts with the same age
Hmm.
because again, those little teeny tiny parts of us have disconnected from our soul, but they're still in our auric field. But so yeah, I mean, you really have to go back to what are you attracting, and as soon as I healed that part, then I started attracting more available, emotionally available men. But here's the thing, my nervous system became dysregulated. And so I
Mm.
had to figure out, I had to actually break something off with somebody that I really had a great connection with because he couldn't not be like this overly emotionally available. And I'm like, you're dysregulating my nervous system. I can't, I have to figure this out. So I need to step away. And I had to make that disconnect. And it sucked, but
Yeah. Yeah.
my nervous system is more important,
Right. Right.
than the connection. And I didn't want him to be somebody that he wasn't either. So yeah.
That's beautiful, and of course, I think I make an assumption you're probably the same belief, but whatever's supposed to be, as long as we take the journey of healing, it'll come back and it'll be
Yeah,
just so
exactly.
important for that journey of healing. Well, Nicole, I appreciate
Yes.
getting to have you on here. I love your energy. I love what you're about. The world needs what
Mm.
like I like all light workers, all healers. Like the world needs us, and the world needs us now more than it's ever needed us. Probably, well, more than it's ever. I don't know if that's a fair statement. We're just in a chapter,
That's a
actually.
fair, that's
Well,
a fair statement.
and to say more than ever, I mean, possibly. But when people say, I mean, I just offer this real quick. When people say like, "Oh, it's the word," look how bad things are. I'm like, well, just in the last century, we had 2 world wars and a Great Depression. Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, yeah, we're in a little disruption. But like, when people are like, "This is the worst it's ever been," I'm like, well, I think we've probably seen some crazier things. But we are in a chapter as a society, as a species, humans. We're in a chapter where we need a little bit more light.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that chapter is a little bit more, abrupt. Say within the last, obviously we look at the last 5 years. There's been just crazy things in world economics, and obviously outside of that, bigger than that. If we look at like the last 50, 100 years, right now we need like there needs to be like 100-fold of you in the world,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
men, the masculine energy, instead of saying men, um served a purpose, and that purpose is beginning to evolve, and men
Mhm.
don't know how to evolve with that. As
Yeah,
society is evolving. Once upon a time, like, we had to do very manly things, like, go back far enough, we had to go out as a group and hunt and figure out how to reason and kill things that could kill us in order to feed our family.
yeah,
That
yeah,
simply just no longer exists.
exactly.
um your work, yeah, go ahead. Sounds like good. You have something you share on that, please?
Oh, no, yeah, and it's interesting. So, I like I said before we got on, I'm creating a retreat, an ayahuasca retreat for the men. And the reason why I'm doing ayahuasca is because, first of all, men are in such resistance to doing the deep work for such a long time, and they're very like an on-demand kind of society, a culture. And so ayahuasca kind of affords that in a beautiful way where you take the brew and then you're on your journey. You just have to take that first step. But I just had a conversation with a guy who's doing ayahuasca retreats as well. And they take them through like kind of a military type of atmosphere. And then they introduce the ayahuasca.
Mm.
And then they take them into more of like the breath work and the meditation. And I don't agree with that. I'm not in alignment
Mhm.
with that,
Mhm.
I feel like that's going to re-traumatize the men. And so I want to go for more of a gentle approach where you're coming in to yourself and you're taking, the medicine, you're breaking down that toxic armor. Like, that's one thing I wanted to say. I'm creating more warriors right now because there is a spiritual warfare that's going on, and we need these men to step in as these strong, healthy, masculine men, breaking down that toxic armor and rebuilding it with a healthy armor. And that comes into the with the shadow work, when you break down that toxic, and then you really are able to release and come back to yourself.
So powerful. I love that we cross paths.
Same here.
Yeah, we're gonna stay connected. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
at your retreats in the future. And there's a good chance. I mean, I just loved the energy. If you're open to it, we'll have you on for another episode in the future.
Sure,
And
I would love
so
to.
for all of the men that are listening, again, that group of men, I'm gonna break it down into three groups. There can be plenty more than that, but I'm breaking it down. There's a group that's like, oh my gosh, these people are crazy. Um, there's a group that group exists. I was in that group once upon a time, and so then there's a group that's like, man, there's something there, but I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous. And then there's a
Mm,
group that's like, oh my gosh, I need this.
mm.
So group one and two, how can they reach out to you or get to experience what you offer?
So they can go to my website, NicoleHarmony.com, or just simply email me at info@NicoleHarmony.com. And I'll be more than happy to hold space and hear their challenges and see if that we're a good fit for a support.
Beautiful, beautiful, and also for obviously for those men that are listening that are interested in experiencing and building that connection with ayahuasca. Obviously, in the future, Nicole's going to be hosting those retreats. So it's going to be something that you would
Mm,
connect with her as well. If you're just listening to the audio, Nicole is Nicole Harmony Harmony. And if you're just listening to the audio, you can check out the video on YouTube. The channel is Success After Trauma, and we're going to have those links posted there for Nicole. Nicole, can you, I'm going to ask if you would just kind of give us closing remarks, closing message, and what I'll ask from you, if you would just channel a message that would be for group two. So for the men that are like, you've definitely just piqued their interest, but of course there's like unknowns. So there's scary, there's nervousness. Would
mhm.
you share final words and a message with that group?
So I will say that if this is coming to you, then there's a reason that it is. And I would like you to answer that call and really draw it into your heart and see what the messages come forward. And if your brain is like on overload and saying, oh no, this is not, remove that piece. That's just the self-sabotage that's coming in. And again, if you're receiving this message, there's a reason. And reach out to me if we've crossed paths. If we are in a video game and we have different people that come into our video game, and then we have the non-participating characters that are in our video game, I've come to you for a purpose, and I just want you to answer that call.
That's powerful. I appreciate that so much, Nicole. Everyone, until the next episode, be great. It's already in you.